You're on a train. A stranger sits down across from you. You glance up. 1 second passes, and in that 1 second, your brain has already decided whether you trust this person. You'd assume this comes from experience, from thousands of faces sorted slowly over a lifetime. But the real answer is far stranger. This judgment isn't built from your life. It's built from your species. Your brain didn't learn to read strangers' faces. It arrived already knowing how. In the early 2000s, psychologist Alexander Todorov showed people photographs of unfamiliar faces for 1/10 of a second. Long enough to register, not long enough to think. Then he asked one question. Do you trust this person? The answers came instantly, no hesitation. And when people stared at the same faces much longer, the verdict barely changed. The decision had already been made. Why would a brain sprint to a conclusion about a stranger with zero real information? Because for most of human history, a stranger wasn't a curiosity. A stranger was a calculation. And slow calculations got people killed. Outside your small band, you had no police, no records, no name to check. Just a face approaching and seconds to decide what it meant. Evolutionary biologist Robert Trivers explained why this mattered. His theory of reciprocal altruism showed that cooperation only works if cheaters get caught. Help someone who helps you back and both of you gain. Help someone who exploits you and you lose. Across thousands of years, predicting who would cooperate wasn't a soft skill. It was survival. So your brain built a shortcut. Not a perfect tool, a fast one. Faces became the input, not because they're reliable narrators of character, but because they were the only narrator available. A relaxed expression read as safe. A tense jaw, narrowed eyes, read as a threat. None of it was reasoned out. It didn't need to be. The people whose brains made these snap calls survived more often than the ones who paused to think. That's the reframe. Your instant judgment of a stranger isn't insight, it's inheritance. Here's where it gets stranger. Researcher Nalini Ambady studied what she called thin slicing. Tiny slivers of behavior people use to make sweeping judgments. A few seconds of body language, a flash of a smile. Her work showed these slices often predicted real outcomes, like job performance and likability. Some studies even found courtroom verdicts correlated with how trustworthy a defendant's face looked, independent of the actual evidence. People went to prison, in part, because of how their face was shaped. That's the twist. Your brain's stranger reading machine isn't just fast. It can override facts, and it's often wrong. A wider jaw doesn't mean more aggression. A softer brow doesn't mean more honesty. Todorov later mapped the features that make a face look trustworthy, and none of them have anything to do with how someone actually behaves. They're just shapes your brain learned to associate with safety. So why keep running something this unreliable? Because for most of human history, being wrong about a stranger was cheap. Being slow to spot a real threat was fatal. Scientists call this error management. When one mistake costs far more than the other, your brain learns to make the cheaper mistake more often, even if that means being wrong a lot. Your brain isn't built for accuracy. It's built to keep you alive long enough to be inaccurate again tomorrow. Now look at where this ancient circuit fires today. You swipe through a dating app, deciding in under a second whether someone seems trustworthy before you've read a single word of their profile. A hiring manager scans headshots before opening a resume, and a sorting mechanism built for the savannah quietly assigns trust scores based on jawlines and smiles. A juror looks at a defendant's face, and the same ancient circuit helps decide, even slightly, whether that face looks like it's telling the truth. None of it is chosen. It's just the oldest part of your brain, still doing the only job it was built for, in a world it was never built for. The danger isn't that this circuit exists, it's that you don't notice it firing. You feel like you're reading the person, you're reading a shape, and the gap between those two things is where unfair judgments quietly live. You can't switch it off, but you can know it's there. So back to the train. The stranger sits down. You glance up. The verdict arrives before you asked for it. Safe or not safe, friend or threat. And this time, you notice it happening. Not because the judgment lied to you, but because, after 100,000 years, you finally caught it in the act.